at a glittering yacht gala meant to celebrate generosity. A proud hostess humiliates a black man she assumes is an uninvited nobody, unaware that he is Elijah Cole, the billionaire owner of the yacht and the true host of the evening. From the moment he's forced off the deck by guards, to his calm yet devastating return that exposes her arrogance before hundreds of guests and millions online, Elijah transforms public silence into accountability. Each chapter unfolds like a storm: humiliation, denial, confrontation, exposure, and finally poetic justice. As the hostess is escorted off the yacht she once ruled, her downfall broadcast worldwide. Through biting dialogue and cinematic tension, the story reveals how arrogance thrives in silence, how prejudice hides behind glamour, and how dignity once denied can rise higher than wealth itself. The evening sun painted the marina gold as guests filed onto the sprawling white yacht, glasses of champagne already in hand, laughter spilled across the deck, silk gowns caught the wind, and camera flashes glittered like fireflies. Elijah Cole stepped quietly across the gangway. His navy blazer was clean but understated. No designer logos, no watch worth more than a house on his wrist. He preferred it that way, but eyes found him anyway. Who's he with? A woman whispered to her partner. Don't know, doesn't look like this crowd. Elijah caught fragments of the murmurs but said nothing. He adjusted his cuff and scanned the yacht. Not the decor, not the wine, not the glittering guests, but the quiet details. Who made eye contact? Who looked away? Who sneered? He'd hosted galas before. He knew how masks slipped when power wasn't obvious. Then came the hostess. Vanessa glided down the deck in a flowing red dress, every inch of her movements rehearsed for attention. Her blonde hair was pulled tight, her smile all teeth. But when she saw Elijah, her expression hardened. "Excuse me," she said sharply, stepping into his path. "This is a private event." Elijah inclined his head. "I'm aware." Her eyes narrowed. "And you are a guest," he replied simply. Vanessa's laugh was brittle, slicing. "A guest, dressed like that. Do you even know whose yacht this is?" Elijah held her gaze. "Yes, I know." She crossed her arms, scanning him up and down, her tone dripping disdain. "This event is for a very specific circle. Billionaires, investors, philanthropists, people who belong." A hush spread around them. Nearby guests leaned closer, pretending not to listen, but savoring every word. Elijah said nothing at first. Then, calmly, "And who decides who belongs?" Vanessa blinked, momentarily thrown, before smirking. "Me, I'm the hostess, and I don't recall approving you." Someone snickered in the background. Glasses clinked. The silence was thick with judgment. Elijah adjusted his jacket, his voice low but steady. "Then perhaps you should check your list." Narration cut in like a blade. Some storms don't begin with thunder. They begin with whispers, sharpened into arrogance. And arrogance never bothers to read the truth. It assumes it. Vanessa leaned closer, her smile venom-sweet. "Don't make this embarrassing for yourself. I don't want to call security." Elijah's eyes softened, almost pitying. "Embarrassment isn't mine to carry." But her sneer deepened, and the evening had only just begun. The clink of glasses and soft hum of violins swirled around the deck, but all attention was fixed on Vanessa and Elijah. Her smile was tight, the kind that didn't touch her eyes. "Show me your invitation," she demanded, hand outstretched like a police officer expecting a license. Elijah slipped a folded card from his inside pocket and placed it gently in her palm. The thick cream paper bore embossed letters EC Foundation Charity Gala. Vanessa glanced at it for a heartbeat, then scoffed and handed it back without actually reading. "Cute. Did you print this at home?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elijah's voice was calm. "It's authentic." She tilted her head. "Authentic, darling. I've hosted this event 3 years running. I know every name on the list. And believe me, your name isn't one of them." A man in a tux muttered under his breath. "He's wasting his time." A woman giggled, covering her mouth behind a jeweled hand. Elijah's expression didn't change. Sometimes lists missed the most important names. Her eyes narrowed. "You don't look like a man with importance. You look lost." A sharp silence cut through the night. The cruelty wasn't in her words alone, it was in the way she said them, each syllable coated with disdain. Elijah let the quiet stretch, forcing her to fill it. "Listen," she continued, voice raised for all to hear. "This yacht is filled with people who earned their way here. Do you have any idea how much this evening costs? The level of class, of arrogance?" Elijah interrupted softly. Gasps broke out. Her cheeks flushed. "Excuse me, you've made a judgment," Elijah said. his tone even, without knowing who I am, what I've done, or why I'm here. The crowd leaned closer. Some looked uneasy, others thrilled by the spectacle. Vanessa lifted her chin. It's my responsibility to protect this event, to ensure people like you don't ruin the atmosphere. People like me, Elijah asked. The words hung heavy in the air. No one dared clarify. She waved dismissively. You know exactly what I mean. You don't belong among billionaires and investors. You don't fit. Elijah's eyes flickered with something sharp. A storm beneath calm waters. Belonging is a fragile word. Often, it says more about the one excluding than the one excluded. But Vanessa didn't listen. She turned to two nearby guests. Do either of you know this man? They looked away, unwilling to get involved. Her smile turned victorious. See, no one can vouch for you. That means you're leaving. Elijah slid the invitation card back into his pocket. His posture remained unbroken, every movement deliberate. You're certain? Absolutely, Vanessa snapped. Leave now, or I'll have you escorted. Narration edged in, heavy with truth. Some moments split the air like glass shattering, not because the words are new, but because they repeat an old wound. The arrogance of gatekeepers, blind to the truth standing right before them. Elijah didn't argue further. He simply said, then call them. Vanessa blinked. What? Security, he said. If you're so certain I don't belong, call them. For the first time, hesitation flickered across her face. But the crowd was watching, hungry for resolution. She couldn't back down now. Her lips curled into a smirk. Fine, let's end this charade. She snapped her fingers toward a guard stationed near the stairs. The man straightened, eyes uncertain, but began walking their way. The balance of the evening shifted with every step he took. Guests sipped nervously, pretending not to stare while drinking in every second. And Elijah, he stood unflinching, shoulders squared, calm as stone. The storm was only beginning. The guard's shoes thudded against the deck as he approached, his brow furrowed, his steps heavy with hesitation. Still, Vanessa's voice carried sharp and clear. Escort this man off the yacht. The guard stopped in front of Elijah. His eyes flickered, uncertain. Sir, may I see some identification? Elijah held his gaze, then produced the same invitation once more. It's already been dismissed, he said quietly. The guard read the embossed lettering, lips moving silently over the name. He looked puzzled, but Vanessa snatched it back before he could finish. Don't waste your time, she snapped. He forged it. Just do your job. Guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. A few clutched their champagne tighter. Others whispered behind manicured hands. Elijah scanned the crowd. Does no one here have a voice? The silence answered him. One man cleared his throat, then quickly looked down at his shoes. A woman turned away, sipping her drink as if the bubbles might hide her shame. Narration crept in. Complicity wears many faces. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is laughter. But it always feeds the same hunger. The hunger of arrogance. Vanessa smirked, enjoying the hush. See, no one cares to defend you. That should tell you something. Elijah tilted his head. It tells me more about them than about me. Stop talking in riddles, she spat. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Elijah said, his voice firm. I'm giving you a chance to see yourself. But you won't look. Her cheeks flushed, not with shame but anger. Guard now. The guard hesitated again. Ma'am, maybe we should do it, she barked. The guests flinched at the sharpness of her tone. The guard sighed, stepping closer to Elijah. Sir, I'm sorry. Please, come with me. Elijah didn't move. Instead, he turned to the guests. His voice carried, calm, yet cutting. How many of you heard her say, people like you? How many of you understood what she meant, and chose silence? The crowd stiffened. Eyes darted everywhere but at him. Does it comfort you? Elijah continued, to watch injustice so long as it isn't aimed at you. Do you tell yourselves it's not your place? Or is it easier to believe she must be right? His words struck like stones thrown into still water. Ripples of discomfort moved through the crowd. Vanessa laughed, brittle. Oh, please, now he's preaching. Next he'll be asking for sympathy. Elijah's gaze returned to her, steady as a blade. Sympathy? No, just truth. And truth doesn't need your permission. The guests shifted again, torn between their fear of Vanessa's social power and the quiet authority radiating from Elijah. Vanessa rolled her eyes. This is pathetic. Get him out of here. The guard finally placed a hand on Elijah's arm. Sir, please. Elijah looked at the guard, then back at the crowd. Remember this moment. Your silence is not neutral. It is an answer. The hush that followed was deafening. Vanessa's lips curved into triumph. Finally, you understand your place. Elijah's tone was low, steady, unyielding. My place is not yours to define. Her smirk faltered for the briefest second before she masked it again. We'll see. The guard began leading Elijah toward the stairs. His steps were steady, not dragged. Each one echoed louder than the last. As if the weight of silence pressed down with every movement, narration sliced through the quiet. The witnesses stood still, some afraid, some indifferent, some relieved the storm had not struck them. But storms remember, and silence is never forgotten. The last glimpse Elijah gave the crowd was not of anger but of disappointment, and then he was gone from their sight. The guard's grip was firm but not harsh, guiding Elijah toward the side stairs that led down to the waiting tender boat. The violinist kept playing, though his bow shook faintly against the strings. Laughter tried to rise again on the deck, but it faltered. Thin and brittle. Vanessa walked behind them, heels clicking, voice sharp enough for everyone to hear. Honestly, the nerve, crashing a billionaire's gala. Do you think no one would notice? That you could just slip in and drink champagne with people far above your station? Her words stung the air like acid. Elijah did not answer. His silence made her angrier. Nothing to say, she prodded. That's what I thought. Men like you never last long in circles like these. The guests stood frozen, glasses half raised, eyes darting anywhere but at the scene unfolding. They didn't want to be caught staring yet. They couldn't look away. The guard hesitated as they reached the stairs. Sir, I'm sorry. It's procedure. Elijah's voice was calm, steady. It's not your apology to make. Vanessa snorted. Don't be so dramatic. You should be grateful we didn't have you arrested. A few guests gasped softly at her words, but no one challenged her. Elijah paused at the top of the stairs and turned, sweeping his gaze across the deck. Remember this moment, he said quietly, but the words carried, not because of what was done to me, but because of what you allowed. His eyes lingered briefly on the crowd, the man who had looked at his shoes, on the woman who had turned away. Shame flickered across their faces, though none spoke. Narration cut in like thunder. Humiliation does not need chains to bind. It is enough that arrogance is believed, and truth ignored. Vanessa laughed harshly, clapping her hands once. Well said. A perfect exit speech. Now, off my yacht. The guard guided Elijah down the narrow stairs to the tender boat waiting below. The small vessel bobbed gently on the darkening waves, engine humming. As Elijah stepped aboard, he straightened his jacket, every movement dignified. He did not look back at Vanessa. But Vanessa leaned over the railing, her voice chasing him down. Don't come back, you hear me? This world is for people who matter. You don't matter. The words struck like knives, and yet Elijah's face remained unreadable. Only his eyes glinted, sharp as steel. The tender pulled away slowly, cutting across the water. From the deck above, silhouettes of the guests blurred against the fading sun. Silent and still, Vanessa, satisfied, dusted her hands as if she'd removed a stain. Finally, now, let's return to the evening. Champagne, anyone? Her tone was flippant, almost gleeful. The guests forced polite laughter, but unease hung heavy. They had witnessed something they could not forget, no matter how much they sipped to drown it. On the tender, Elijah sat alone, the salt air tugging at his jacket. He pulled out his phone, pressing one number. His voice was quiet but edged with command. It's time, he said. A pause. A calm reply on the other end. Elijah's eyes never left the glowing yacht behind him, lights shimmering against the water. Yes, he confirmed softly. They'll see soon enough. The tender cut across the waves, steady and unstoppable. Narration closed the scene. Some exits are not defeats. Some exits are preludes. The stage had only just been set, and the play was far from over. The gala moved on, at least on the surface. The string quartet picked up tempo, waiters circulated with fresh trays, and Vanessa floated across the deck as if nothing had happened. Yet beneath the glitter and laughter, unease coiled tight. Two women huddled near the bar, their voices low. Did you see his invitation? It looked real. Vanessa didn't even read it. She just tossed it aside. Still, maybe he was lying. Or maybe she didn't want him here. A tuxedoed man leaned in closer, whispering to another guest. I think I've seen him before. Somewhere, on the cover of Forbes. Maybe. His companion shook his head nervously. Careful. Don't say that too loudly. You know how Vanessa is. She cut you off socially in a heartbeat. And so the silence continued, whispers behind cupped hands. Suspicion growing, but no one brave enough to speak aloud. At a corner table sat Mia Torres, a young journalist invited to cover the charity aspect of the gala. She hadn't expected fireworks, just a fluff piece about donations and speeches, but her instincts told her this was different. She had caught everything on her phone: Vanessa's scorn, Elijah's calm defiance, the crowd's silence. She tapped her recorder, replaying the words in her earbuds. "People like you." The phrase hissed with venom, impossible to ignore. Mia frowned, whispering to herself, "Why does he look so familiar?" Her photographer colleague leaned over. "Because he's not some random guest. I swear I've seen him in business features." Mia's pulse quickened. She opened her phone's browser and typed quickly, "Elijah Cole, CEO." Within seconds, images loaded: magazine covers, charity headlines, a photo of him standing in front of the very yacht they were now on. Her breath caught. "Oh my God, he owns this." The photographer swore under his breath. "And she just threw him out," Mia finished, "in front of everyone." Across the deck, Vanessa raised her glass high, laughing with a cluster of wealthy guests. But cracks had begun to spread in her mask. She caught the whispers, saw the sideways glances. Her smile sharpened, daring anyone to question her. "Is there a problem?" she asked loudly to a small group nearby. They startled. One woman forced a laugh. "No, just enjoying the evening." Vanessa leaned in, her voice a whisper, edged with steel. "Good, because I will not tolerate anyone spoiling it." The group fell silent instantly. Vanessa straightened, satisfied, but Mia wasn't silent. She leaned across to her colleague. "This is bigger than a fluff story. If this gets out," he nodded grimly, "it'll explode." Mia exhaled. "Then we make sure it does." She pressed save on her recordings. Meanwhile, miles away on the tender boat, Elijah's call was still echoing in the air. "Everything's ready?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," Elijah replied, his tone quiet but resolute. "I've been patient long enough. Tonight, the mask comes off." He ended the call and gazed back at the glowing yacht. From this distance, it looked like a jewel on the dark water, beautiful, dazzling, but fragile. Narration rose like a tide. Whispers are the beginning of truth. They slip between the cracks of silence, gathering weight, until silence can no longer contain them. Back on the yacht, guests shifted uneasily in their seats, laughing too loud, drinking too fast. Vanessa basked in her illusion of control, unaware that her arrogance had already sown her downfall. 4 whispers had begun, and whispers, once born, cannot be silenced. The gala had begun to slip into uneasy rhythm again. The quartet played, waiters smiled, and Vanessa sparkled under the decklights, sipping champagne as though her victory was complete. But unease still lingered. Whispers had grown teeth. "Are you sure he wasn't on the list?" a man muttered to his date. "Vanessa said so," she replied, though her eyes darted nervously. She must know. Yet neither of them sounded convinced. Suddenly, the low rumble of an engine cut through the music. Heads turned toward the water. A sleek black launch boat pulled alongside the yacht, its polished sides gleaming under the floodlights. Crew members hurried to the railing as the vessel docked. And then Elijah stepped back aboard. He was not alone. 2 discreet aides flanked him, one carrying a leather portfolio, the other a sleek communication headset. Behind them came the gala's event manager, her face tight with urgency. The deck fell silent. Vanessa's smile froze. She blinked, then laughed loudly, trying to reclaim the moment. "Oh, for heaven's sake, you again. Didn't I make myself clear?" The event manager stepped forward before Elijah could speak. Her voice rang across the deck. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host this evening, Mr. Elijah Cole." A gasp swept through the crowd. Glasses lowered, mouths dropped open. Elijah stood still, calm as stone, letting the words sink in. Vanessa's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" she hissed at the manager. The woman's jaw was firm. "Mr. Cole is not only tonight's host but also the owner of this yacht and the primary benefactor of the foundation." Guests began murmuring wildly. "Elijah Cole, that Elijah Cole, the billionaire philanthropist. Oh my God, we just watched Vanessa throw him off his own yacht." Vanessa's hands trembled as she gripped her glass too tightly. No, this is ridiculous. He can't be." "He was dressed like what?" Elijah asked quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos. She froze, the unfinished insult hanging heavy in the air. He took a slow step forward. "You didn't recognize me because I didn't arrive wrapped in logos or flaunting my wealth. You saw what you wanted to see." Vanessa's lips parted, searching for words. I I was protecting the event. It was a misunderstanding, was it? Elijah's eyes never left hers. Or was it judgment? The silence that followed was suffocating. Narration slid in, deliberate and sharp. Truth does not need to shout. It enters quietly, and arrogance collapses in its shadow. A guest whispered audibly, "I can't believe this." She humiliated him, in front of all of us. Phones began to appear, subtle at first, then bold. Screens lit up the deck as guests started filming. The weight of exposure pressed closer with every second. Vanessa's voice cracked as she turned to the crowd. "Listen, everyone, this was just a mistake. You all know I would never what?" Elijah's tone was calm, but his words sliced. "Never judge, never humiliate, never assume someone's worth based on your shallow measure of belonging." She faltered, stammering, "I know, that's not what I meant." The event manager cleared her throat, her voice steady. "Mr. Cole, the microphone is ready whenever you wish to address your guests." Elijah nodded once. His gaze lingered on Vanessa a moment longer. Then he turned toward the stage set up for the gala speeches. The crowd parted for him. Silence, heavy with awe, shame, and anticipation. Vanessa stood trembling, her glass finally slipping from her fingers and shattering against the deck. No one rushed to comfort her. Every eye was now on Elijah, and the night that had begun with whispers was about to thunder. Elijah stood on the small stage at the center of the deck. The microphone gleamed beneath the He didn't touch it yet, he didn't need to. The hush was already absolute. Vanessa lingered near the railing, pale beneath the golden deck lights, trying to compose her face, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Elijah's voice carried easily without amplification. Tonight was meant to celebrate generosity, to remind us that wealth is not only measured in dollars, but in dignity. Guests shifted in their seats, eyes glued to him. He continued, calm but unyielding. "Instead, we witnessed something else. Arrogance, prejudice, the assumption that a person's worth can be judged in an instant." Vanessa forced a shaky laugh. "Oh, come on, you're exaggerating. It was a misunderstanding, that's all. I didn't know who you were." Elijah turned his gaze toward her, steady and piercing. "You didn't care who I was. You only cared that I didn't look the part you expected." Gasps rippled through the audience, phones tilted higher, recording every word. Vanessa's smile twitched. "You're twisting this. I was protecting your event from an intruder holding an invitation signed by himself." Elijah's tone was quiet but devastating. Mia Torres, the journalist, stepped closer, her phone raised. She called out, "I recorded everything, every word you said to him, including people like you." The crowd stirred, whispers spreading like fire. Vanessa spun toward Mia, her voice shrill. "That's out of context. You can't use that." "Oh, I think I can," Mia replied, her voice steady. "The world deserves to hear it." Elijah's gaze swept over the crowd. "This is not only about one woman's arrogance, it's about every silence that allowed it, about every guest who stood by, hoping not to be noticed, relieved the humiliation was not theirs." Several guests lowered their heads, shame flickering across their faces. Narration cut in, grave and unrelenting. "Silence is not neutral, it is permission, and permission is how arrogance thrives." Vanessa's voice cracked, desperate now. "Please, everyone knows me. I've hosted this gala for years. I give my time, my connections, everything." Elijah tilted his head. "Connections built on exclusion, time spent guarding gates that were never yours to close." The words landed heavy. Some guests clapped softly, then louder. The applause grew, swelling until Vanessa's protests were drowned out. Her face twisted in disbelief. "You're applauding him, after all I've done for this event." Elijah finally stepped to the microphone, his presence commanding. He spoke not with anger, but with clarity. "Dignity cannot be rented, respect cannot be purchased, and arrogance, no matter how loud, cannot erase truth." Phones flashed, guests cheered, the tide had turned. Vanessa tried once more, her voice brittle. "Elijah, please, you can't let one misunderstanding ruin me. You need me. I need hosts who honor dignity." Elijah interrupted, "not ones who destroy it." Her breath caught, her mask slipping entirely. For the first time, she looked small, stripped of her practiced glamour, and the cameras captured it all. The applause still echoed across the deck when Elijah lowered the microphone. His gaze swept the crowd, once more composed, unshaken. He didn't need anger. The truth was already louder than any shout. Vanessa stood frozen near the railing, her once proud posture crumbling. Her red dress shimmered under the lights, but the confidence inside it had dissolved. Elijah spoke again, each word deliberate. This gala is about more than money. It is about integrity, and integrity is not something you wear. It is something you live. Guests nodded, murmuring in agreement. Some even clapped again. Elijah turned his attention back to Vanessa. His voice remained calm, but steel-lined every syllable. Vanessa, as of this moment, you are relieved of all duties associated with this event. You will no longer host my galas, represent my foundation, or set foot on this yacht. The crowd gasped. Vanessa's eyes widened. You can't do that. I can, Elijah replied, and I just did. Her hands shook violently, clutching at the railing. But you need me. I built these guest lists, these connections. You built them on exclusion, Elijah cut in, on arrogance. And tonight, in front of everyone, you revealed exactly who you are. Phones were raised higher now, capturing every tear, every crack in her voice. Vanessa's composure shattered. Elijah, please, I was protecting your image. I was keeping out people who didn't belong. His eyes narrowed. And in your arrogance, you tried to throw out the very person who created this gathering. You didn't protect the event. You corrupted it. The deck was utterly silent, except for the soft click of cameras and the recording of phones. Narration flowed like judgment. Poetic justice is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, calm, unyielding, and in its quietness, it breaks louder than thunder. Elijah turned to security, the same guards who had escorted him off earlier. Please show her out. The irony struck the crowd instantly. Gasps, then murmurs, then a ripple of laughter, sharp with disbelief. The guards hesitated. Vanessa spun toward them, her voice desperate. No, you work for me, one of the guards interrupted, his voice firm. We work for Mr. Cole. Vanessa's jaw dropped. No, wait, Elijah, don't do this. Don't humiliate me like this. Elijah's voice softened, but it carried like a verdict. You humiliated yourself. The guards stepped forward. Vanessa tried to back away, but there was nowhere left to run. The applause began quietly, then swelled as she was gently but firmly guided toward the stairs. No, this is my event, she screamed, but her words were drowned by clapping, cheers, and the recording lights of dozens of phones that she descended toward the tender boat, the same humiliating path. Elijah had walked earlier. The contrast was undeniable. He had walked with dignity. She, with desperation. Her last shrill cry echoed faintly over the water, before being swallowed by the sea breeze. Elijah raised the microphone one last time. Now, he said simply, let us continue what we came here to do, to honor those in need, not ourselves. The guests erupted in applause, not just for the words but for the justice they had witnessed. The night's balance had shifted. Elijah stepped back, letting the music resume, the atmosphere reborn. But the image of Vanessa being escorted off lingered like a scar one no amount of champagne could erase. Narration closed the moment with quiet finality. The gatekeeper had been expelled from the very gates she guarded, and justice, at last, had stepped aboard. The music softened, fading into the background as Elijah stepped back to the microphone. The atmosphere was different now, charged, unsettled, waiting. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. Some of you clapped tonight because justice felt good to watch. Elijah began, his tone even, but let's not mistake relief for responsibility. Guests shifted uneasily, glasses lowered, heads turned away from the piercing weight of his words. Earlier, Elijah continued, when I was escorted off this yacht, most of you said nothing. You saw what was happening, and you turned your eyes elsewhere. The silence deepened, raw and uncomfortable. He paused, then leaned closer to the microphone. Do you know what silence does? No one answered. The tension was unbearable. It builds walls. It strengthens arrogance. It gives permission to prejudice. Silence is not neutral, it is a choice. His words landed heavy, like stones dropped into water. A man in the front row cleared his throat, guilty. I didn't know what to say. Elijah met his gaze. You didn't have to know what to say. You only had to say something. Anything that said, this is wrong. Narration slipped through like a cold wind. It is not only the hand that strikes, but the eyes that look away, that wound the deepest dot. Mia Torres, still holding her phone, stepped closer. Her voice was steady but laced with admiration. And that's why this will go viral. People need to see the cost of silence. Several guests looked at her uneasily, realizing their own images were now recorded forever. Faces complicit in the scene. Elijah nodded slightly toward her but didn't stop. His eyes scanned the crowd again. If you applauded when Vanessa was escorted out, ask yourself, why did you stay silent before? Because dignity isn't proven when the tide turns in your favor. It's proven when you stand against the tide. A hush fell so thick it almost pulsed. No one dared interrupt. Elijah straightened his jacket, his voice calm again. I do not need apologies. I do not need excuses. What this world needs is courage. The courage to speak when silence feels safer. The courage to see worth beyond appearances. The courage to defend dignity, even when it costs us something. For the first time that night, heads lifted not in pride, but in reflection. Eyes met his, some misted with shame, others with a spark of awakening. A woman near the back finally whispered, "You're right." Elijah gave her a small nod. It's not about being right, it's about being human. He let the microphone rest on the stand, his final words lingering in the air. If you leave this yacht unchanged, then tonight was wasted. But if you leave with courage, then dignity has flown higher than wealth ever could. Applause rose, not the shala, performative clapping from before, but a deeper, slower rhythm. Some stood, some bowed their heads, but all felt the weight of what had just been spoken. Mia lowered her phone, her voice soft but certain. The world will remember this night. Narration closed the chapter with quiet authority, and so the yacht sailed on, carrying not only its passengers, but the echo of a truth too sharp to forget. Silence had been broken. Dignity had taken flight. By morning, the story had already ignited across the internet. Clips from Mia Torres's phone flooded every platform. Vanessa's sneer, her words, "people like you," her shrill protests as she was escorted off the yacht, paired with Elijah's calm dismantling of her arrogance. The footage spread like fire. Headlines screamed across news feeds. Socialite humiliates black guest not knowing he owned the yacht. Billionaire Elijah Cole exposes racism at his own gala. Silence is not neutral. The speech everyone's talking about. Vanessa awoke to chaos. Her phone buzzed endlessly, calls unanswered, messages piling. Her sponsors had already pulled out. Invitations she once controlled vanished overnight. The foundation she bragged about hosting severed ties immediately. Narration cut sharp. The gates she guarded so viciously had closed on her, and this time, no key could reopen them. Meanwhile, Elijah sat in his office, overlooking the city skyline, sipping coffee in silence. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. Justice wasn't a performance to him, it was restoration. Mia walked in, phone in hand. "You've gone viral. 30 million views in 12 hours. They're calling your speech the flight of dignity." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Catchy. They're also asking if you'll speak publicly. Television networks, conferences. Everyone wants to hear more." Elijah shook his head gently. "The message doesn't need more cameras. It needs more courage. It needs to live in how people act, not in how they clap." Mia studied him for a moment, then smiled. "That's why it hit so hard, because you didn't ask for applause. You asked for accountability." A pause hung between them before Elijah finally spoke. "And accountability starts with me. If I had revealed who I was sooner, maybe the humiliation could have been avoided." "No," Mia said firmly. Her arrogance was waiting for a target. "You didn't create, E2 exposed it, and the world saw it." Elijah nodded once, accepting her words, though his eyes carried the weight of centuries behind them. Meanwhile, across the city, Vanessa's downfall unraveled in real time. Videos of her screaming on the yacht played endlessly on talk shows. Memes mocked her entitled glare. Former friends publicly distanced themselves. Her name, once gilded in society columns, became synonymous with disgrace. Narration threaded through her collapse. Prejudice wears many masks: glamour, charity, sophistication, but when the mask slips, the face beneath cannot hide. And arrogance, once exposed, is a wound that festers in the light. That evening, Elijah walked the city streets alone. No entourage, no spotlight, just a man among people. He passed a group of teenagers huddled around a phone, replaying his speech. One of them looked up, recognized him, and whispered, "That's him." The others stared, wide-eyed. Elijah gave a small nod and kept walking. A voice called out behind him, "Hey man, thanks for saying it. For all of us." Elijah didn't turn, but his steps slowed, lighter, because that was the point. Not his vindication, but the spark it lit in others, on the pier. As the city lights reflected across the water, Elijah paused, breathing in the night air. The yacht was docked in the distant, silent, empty, yet echoing with the memory of what had happened. Narration closed in, steady and resolute. Poetic justice had played its hand. The arrogant had fallen, the silent had been confronted, and dignity once denied had risen higher than wealth, higher than arrogance, higher than silence itself. The billionaire had never needed to prove his worth, but the world, at last, was forced to measure its own.